Welcome back to Tell Us About. We are in episode 5, and today we are joined by the mastermind of the FATED Connections podcast, an absolute visionary of Path of Exile, and he might be the most important person on the entire planet. He is not holding me hostage right now. Definitely not. There's no gun to my head at all.
I don't even know what you're talking about. I mean, it's very, very clearly obvious from the very different background that I'm in a completely different location. I mean,
Yeah, well, disguises. So, uh,
no,
you're here. You're here
I don't know
today.
about the accuracy of that introduction. Maybe the most baldest person on the planet, but I'm certainly glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So you're gonna tell us a little bit about how you got involved in Path of Exile today. You're gonna tell us about how you got started with the podcast and some stuff behind the scenes, and then we'll probably just go in whatever direction it goes. You know, we don't have too much of a plan here, and we'll just go with the flow. So
Always important.
Yeah. Let me start you off with so how did you get into gaming and Path of Exile in general?
All right, that's probably going to be the one point where I'm going to talk for the longest time because that lays the foundation for everything, right? Um,
Are you
I want
writing
to
a
start.
novel, or what is that? What we're doing today? You got to lay the
Well,
foundation. Are there a lot of supporting characters that you got to flesh out? Or?
exactly.
Oh, okay.
You know these little setups for the twists later so that you get the right payoffs? It's
Uh-huh.
super important.
Okay.
Nah, it's like I've just been gaming as a young kid. I had a Game Boy and this and that, and I got a desktop PC with like 60 megahertz for my birthday when I was like, how old was I? 8? And yeah, super bomb. 60 megahertz Pentium computer. How do you say it in English? Pentium or Pentium? Like back
Pentium.
then I didn't speak English. Pentium.
Pentium.
We
Yep.
always called them Pentium in German.
Gotcha. Yeah. Pentium 4 processor or whatever that was.
Yeah,
First
that
we
was just
start
a
out with
one.
like the
It was
2.
60 megahertz,
Yeah.
8
Okay.
megabyte RAM, and a double speed CD-ROM, right? So it could read twice as fast as it would play back, right? When you hypothetically when you were playing
Yeah.
music.
Yeah.
That's amazing, right? And then I had like back in the day, I had SimCity 2000 on that, and I had Aces Over Europe, which many people may not know. I think
I
SimCity
don't know about that one.
is a
SimCity,
name
I
that
know for
people know,
sure.
but Aces Over Europe was like a Second World War simulation. I think it
Gotcha.
was done by similar people or same people as the Red Baron games, although I'm not entirely sure. But it's definitely very similar in terms of style, right? Like, I mean, most games looked very similar back then because you had like a viewport of 320 by 400 pixels or something like that for a 3D simulation. So not really that much difference. But yeah, those I played and they really coined me. I really think I got stuck on flight simulators and real-time strategy games early on. It was just very fun for me. I don't know. I'm trying to think what it is that appeals to me about it, but I guess that the micromanaging in both is like you have to monitor so many things and they're happening. And you need to process the information and make a decision. But like I never really was like trying to be good at it. Like I was always playing, right? Like a little kid with any sort of games. It was all for me about being playful and live out imagination rather than success driven. I also never had internet at home when I was growing up. So it was like, yeah, just enjoyment and experimentation and never really trying to be good at things. And another game that I really enjoyed was Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Okay.
Tycoon.
Yep. Yep.
The
My sister liked
1 and
that one.
2, the ones that were done by Peter Molyneux himself. If I recall correctly, was that the guy? I might be
I have
completely
no
wrong here.
idea who made the game, but I know my sister played it, and then I played it with it.
Wait, I'm quickly googling that. Cut that out, right?
Exactly.
Um,
No, we're leaving this in. Okay, guys, if you're listening from audio only, Catmaster decided in the middle of a podcast that he needed to Google the name of who made this video game.
Well, we Google things all the time on our podcast. It's not a problem there.
Okay.
It's not my problem if you're not set up for it now.
I'm
JK.
not set up for it.
What did I want to say? I have the tendency to go way too far. So let's loop back to my
How
experience.
did you get into Path of Exile? Let's go that direction. Okay.
So directly Path of Exile?
Yeah, let's go. Let's just jump all the way into that. I don't know, man. We're Googling stuff
League of Legends. League of Legends was something I played for a couple of years. We really enjoyed like having, games in isolation, like having a self-contained round every time I play. Right? You play for like an hour roughly, and then everything resets. Sure, there's like a larger progression system in League of Legends to unlock champions and like masteries and stuff. I haven't played it in years. I heard runes are not a thing anymore. I have no idea how it works now. Back then it was like that. And I never really got better than silver. Like I said, never really competitive minded. But what really appealed to me about League of Legends was that I felt it was my shot at playing the game I'd always wanted to play. But since when I was growing up, I never had internet at home. I never like bothered to buy Warcraft 3, and so I never got to play Dota. And the 2 or 3 times that I played it at a friend's place, I was like fascinated with the game, but then I never got to play again because we always only had one PC and like rotated. But because I sucked at the game, because I never played it before, they didn't want to let me play, but they wanted other people to play so that it would be more fun to watch for everyone. Which at the time I kind of agreed with. In retrospective, kind of a dick move to not let me play. But well, I mean, how am I going to learn it if I never get to play it, right?
Maybe that wasn't the point for your friends. They just wanted to play it, so they didn't care if you got good.
Nah, it's fair. It's fair. It's like if you want to get good at it, just get internet at home and buy yourself a game.
Yeah.
I was really close for a moment.
Did they yell that at you?
At me. They were really cool when I failed
get your own
2
internet?
or 3 games. But then when the question was like who's playing next, I was just never a favorite pick, and I also felt like kind of pressured. Like I felt like I couldn't even perform even if they would let me play because I'd feel under pressure to do things a certain way.
Gotcha.
And when there's like 3 different people telling you different things of what to do, then you have to call the shot, but you don't know anything about the game, then
that's not a pleasurable experience for you. Wasn't one of those things that you just love doing. Okay.
But yeah, long story short, always enjoyed League, never was really good at it. And then by late 2013, 2014, most people who I play with were just pretty much done with the game because like it was going into a different direction, or they played for so long that they were burnt out. And I myself wasn't really getting better anymore, just frustrated and shit. So I just wasn't willing to put in the time and the work to become a better player, or good enough to the point that I would actually enjoy the game. And then was on hiatus for a while. And late 2014, like a friend approached me to play Path of Exile. And Path of Exile is something that I'd been familiar with, or I knew that it existed, because when I was getting into League of Legends, that also with the whole global championship and the scene growing and stuff, it also dragged me into Twitch. League of Legends basically made me go into Twitch and seek out streamers and watch people like, Skara, I tuned into regularly, this Robert X. Lee guy, and Wings of Death, also very noteworthy mention. And Wings of Death was someone who already very early adopted Path of Exile and showed it on stream and played it. I think as early as 2013, at least that's when I found it through him. But I mean, he may have played in 2012 already, who knows? So I made my Path of Exile account actually in February 2013 already. So I had that Catmaster account since then, but it never really played until late 2013 when a friend of mine came up and was like, "Yeah, well, let's play Path of Exile together and get into that." And started with like 2 friends in softcore permanent, and I had some different small side story now again. I had some small regrets with never having played D3. When I first saw D3, I was like, that's not really what I liked about D2, and I never looked too much into it, only heard people talk about it here and there. And I know that a lot of people had great fun when D3 was launched, because any like big game launch is super interesting to figure out new systems and stuff. But also there was this real money auction house
Yeah,
that
that whole thing.
D3 had, and some people got really rich, like they made a lot of money IRL with that. And I thought, that would have been kind of cool to play and then, generate wealth in game and then trade that away for wealth outside of the game. And I was not aware that in PoE that was against TOS, right? I didn't do anything, but that was my original intention getting into PoE was like, I gotta get good at this game, and then I can play hardcore and generate wealth, and then I can sell that for real money. That was the original intention. And then when I actually played the game, it just hit so many like old feels from playing Diablo 2 when I was younger. I had played a little bit of Diablo 2. Like I said,
Like
idiot kid at home, just
offline
playing
before
around
you had the internet.
offline. Yeah, I just was using hex editors basically to cheat my way through the game. I
Yeah,
mean, I
yeah.
did one legit
Super
playthrough
super
without cheating.
serious, legit
I did one
Diablo
legit
2.
playthrough, but I just was bad at the game. Like it was a completely different time. You have to imagine, like back then, the internet wasn't as developed, and like most people didn't have access to the internet. So the sharing of information when it comes to solving games was just completely different. Like the only way I had picking up the game was the resources inside the game, right? And then whatever I could read in like game magazines in the tips and tricks sections, or like solutions or build guides that they had
Yeah.
back then, some stuff. But that was very, very, very small amounts of information. So I had like no idea what I was doing. And like I said, finished the game on normal difficulty once, beat Diablo, and like never felt the need to push harder to learn more about the game to be better at it.
Gotcha.
And but then when I played PoE, it just directly had those things, like a very similar experience. Like it hit those notes, right? Like when scrolls drop, that's drop sound, the micromanaging items in the inventory, all that sort of stuff made it feel like they just elaborated on what was fun about Diablo 2 and made it in their own game, PoE. And I mean, I still feel like nowadays it comes out quite clearly that PoE is made by people who want to make this game because there's nothing else like it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it changed a lot of the path from back when I started, where it is now, and stuff like that. But I think that core philosophy that they're making a game where they just elaborate on what they like best about Diablo 2, and combine it with fresh ideas and a modern engine and modern gameplay. Yeah, and also incorporate the community aspect. That it was a little bit of nostalgia bait when I came in, right? Because the sounds and the feel, but then like it just stuck with me because the game is brings so many own ideas and so much own value to the table.
How did you get into then taking the game more seriously, because you never did in the past? What made you do that? Because
well, in League of Legends, I had. Oh, please finish your question before I start
no,
talking for another.
it seems
20
like
minutes.
you had a different approach back in the day where you're playing more for fun. You weren't looking things up, and there were no ways to look things up. Whereas how you approach it now, it seems like I think you told me that you like to play through it, but then like later you'll look it up. So do you still like, how do you approach the game now, and would you say it's different than how you did in the past?
Yeah, so but yeah, you hit the nail there, because like basically when I was growing up enjoying all these different games, it was never about being good. The fun was derived from like just dabbling in the game and doing whatever you wanted, having freedom, right? And then when I got into League of Legends, that's when I first had my taste of competitive mindset in terms of, hey, this game would actually be more fun if I was better at it, right? That was something that previously I never really felt. Like, yeah, sure, with some games where I struggled to complete them, like Jagged Alliance 2, I think I played a lot, and I never finished the game because I'm just so bad at it, right? I don't know whether you're familiar with that one. It's
No, I
like
don't know that one.
a turn-based strategy game with like guns where you free a third world country with mercenaries. It's quite amazing, and I think that's like one of my big loves next to D2, and I wish that someone like GGG did to Jagged Alliance 2 what GGG did to Diablo 2, and that is
Yeah.
take the core aspects of what's fun about those deep systems and interactions and stuff, and then elaborate on it and bring new things into the mix.
Yeah. I actually probably would like that game. I played XCOM a
Oh yeah,
bunch,
yeah, very
although
similar.
that
I watched
style.
Project PT play a lot of XCOM on stream after like when he was on PoE hiatus for so long.
Hmm.
But yeah, back to PoE and me starting out, I was terrible at the game. I was super unfit. I had like no idea how RPG mechanics worked. The only frame of reference that I had was League of Legends mechanics, which were
Hmm.
quite a bit dumbed down, like simpler than PoE in all regards. Right, player stats, monster stats, itemization. It's all much simpler, obviously, in an MMORPG than in a game like PoE.
Yeah, for sure. The itemization's actually pretty complex, especially with the crafting, the advanced crafting methods and stuff, and you can make a ton of money just from knowing them because it's so niche
Yeah.
in the game.
And what also didn't like help was that there's like things in the game that just were never there like that before. Like the idea that the currency system doesn't have like a centralized gold currency in Path of Exile. That's something that previously no big game did in the same way. Where like everything that you use to trade or that you get back from trades is something that actually has a use in the world. And that's also where it elaborates on something that I found fun about Diablo 2. I don't know how much Diablo 2 you played, but for me it was always super memorable when in the end of Act 1 with the blacksmith quest, Charcy is her name, in the rogue encampment or whatever it's called, um, where she lets you give her an item and she turns it into a rare item,
Hmm.
like guaranteed. And that's basically what an Orb of Alchemy does. Only in Path of Exile you get to do that not only once per playthrough, but you do it all the time, right?
Yeah,
And that's what really like drove it home for me, or like one of the things that drove. There's just so many things that I
interesting. I've
like to
I've
highlight.
never thought about that. I mean, remember making characters to be able to use that to make rare rings that were really good all the time when I played Diablo 2, but I never connected those dots or kind of thought about it that way. So I find that
I think
interesting.
someone at GGG, like someone from the founders, like specifically thought about that moment and how impactful and fun and memorable it is, and how they
Hmm.
wanted that to be something that you end up doing a lot in Path of Exile, like item modification. Because I remember in Diablo 2 there was like almost no modification, right? Like in the base game, you just
Yeah,
found items.
basically.
Yeah,
Hmm. Other than
and
like
in
the rune
PoE,
words or and then you got the unique items and they had ranges, but that was the extent to it.
yeah, yeah. So what am I trying to say? Game was pretty hard. Lots of systems that I'd never been confronted with. Like conceptually, was something completely new for me because I'd never gotten into any RPG stats and games and mechanics. Very hard to pick up. Took a while, but you know, eventually I get better. And when in end of 2014, when Torment and Bloodlines leagues dropped, that was when GGG, many people who listen now will not be familiar with the idea that they used to make different leagues for softcore and hardcore.
Hmm.
So, like a temporary league that would be going on for 3 months would be a different one in softcore than it was in hardcore, and they'd have their own like sort of rewards and their own uniques that you could get in both. So they both had some appeal. And Torment was the softcore league where you had tormented spirits pop up randomly in the zones that you could use to juice up your rares. And back then they were actually super scary because the game was a lot slower paced and you'd actually have like a little bit of a back and forth with packs and monsters more often than you have nowadays. Nowadays it's like basically you run through the game and one shot everything. But back
Yeah.
then it was like you found a rogue exile, you'd have like a 5 to 10 second battle with him, and then that rogue exile would get possessed by a tormented spirit. You'd have like a 30 to 60 second battle with him, and depending at on at which point in the progression you had that, it was quite scary. So I was happy that tormented spirits were not in hardcore in the beginning, right when they were first introduced. It was bloodlines in hardcore, and bloodlines was quite merciless as well. It was terrible. There was a lot of bloodlines in the league that aren't there anymore now. Mostly Phylacteral Link. I don't know whether you remember that one. It's
Yep.
the yeah, you do. Well, it's the
Unfortunately.
thing. where there's a marker under one monster of the pack, and that's the only one you can damage, and the marker like jumps between the different monsters. It's the one boss in Crystal Veins map or something like that still has that. That's like kind of a homage to that.
Yeah, and the council fight I believe has that mechanic as well. But they're
True, but
it's
not with
so
that
it's so
specific
much
marker.
of yeah, exactly. But similar concept, but it's so much of a joke that you just kind of just run through and kill them all
True.
instantly. So
Although they buffed it a couple leagues back for a while, it wasn't super jokey. But yeah.
gotcha.
But I think like the thing is when you grind so much until you finally get to that fight, then your character is also so decked out that the fight is usually not a problem. If you could actually do the fight when you have a certain level or someone, it would be much harder. But because it's so unlikely to get the things that you need to do the fight to access the fight,
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean,
it's
like
kind of a joke.
Azubi used to be like a big deal, and then like the Shaper was a big deal, and the Elder was a big deal, and then the Uber Elder was a big deal, and then people do the fight more and more and get better at the mechanics, and if it's a mechanic driven fight, then it becomes less of a big deal. Plus power creep.
Yeah, that plus massive power creep from league to league.
Yeah, definitely helps. Definitely helps. Sure.
I feel like I can't point to the specific quote, but I think like Chris confirmed at some point on some podcast or interview that there's like a built-in power creep from league to league that is intended by like 5 to 10% power. So like because
Yeah.
they want the new things that they introduce to the game to be appealing, and the only way that they think that they can do that is they need to be slightly better than the best things that you could have before.
Yeah.
And so over time things get watered down, but I like that they've stepped in and reworked some of the older encounters and fights. I mean, they recently buffed Ziri and changed the drop pool. It's already a while ago now, but yeah.
Well, even
I hope that they'll do
Ascendancies
that.
were so long ago too, and that was a huge game changer back in the day.
Ascendancies were massive power creep, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some of them, like the Berserker one, you get a inherit 40% more multiplier, and then if you actually go the Blitz route, you get another 40% to attack speed. That's huge power creep relative to not having any of them. So,
Absolutely.
or
Yeah.
just from
No,
a
but the
defensive
idea is, I
perspective.
mean, I think at some point some ascendancies were weaker, and there was like a little bit of a smaller difference between not having an ascendancy and having an ascendancy on average. But they really doubled down on them because they want the ascendancies to feel impactful. Like every single one of the 19 ones should feel very powerful when you get into it.
Yeah.
And I think I honestly even like the design. A lot of people were opposed to it because one of the things that people initially celebrated about PoE was, and I find it kind of silly, was the idea that you could do every build on every character class, right? That you can do a Glacial Hammer Witch if you want to, even though it's not the best idea, but you could.
Mm-hmm.
But matter of fact, I mean, the difference is bigger now, but like it was still a bad idea to do a build on a class that had a starting point that is nowhere near the clusters that you actually wanted to pick up in the build, right? There's always been like an inherent advantage to certain builds being done on certain classes.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just they doubled down on that class identity, and I personally like that. I think it's very flavorful, and ascendancies are a lot like I, they're very appealing, especially to a newer player. I just wish they did a better job at explaining the class system to someone who just started the game, because a lot of people are unaware when they pick one of the 7 base classes that they will still get to pick a subclass. And by the time that they know that they picked the subclass, they're already very invested in the game and in the character. They already, if they're new to the game, probably spend like 10 to 20 hours. And then do they really want to go and make a new class when they realize that the ascendancy that they would want to pick is not available for the base class that they did end up picking?
Yeah. And then what do you think of the new jewels that they added where you get one other ascendancy of potentially another ascendancy in it? One
It's
node.
insanely powerful.
Yeah.
But doesn't much affect me in HC SSF because I'll never see a matching pair of jewels. But
Well,
yeah, the
you chose to
base
play
game.
HCF SSF. No one made you. Well, did someone make you?
No, I'm actually
Oh,
happy that I don't see the power creep, right? Because
okay.
otherwise I'd probably be more critical of it. I'd probably be more opposed to it. But the fact that I'm never gonna see it, and the average player also is never gonna. I mean, they're actually fairly cheap, right? I've watched some streamers look up prices for some, and some go as
Some of
cheap
them,
as
and
5x.
some of them are insanely expensive, and then some of
Yeah,
them
yeah.
are
But if you
not.
stray
But
away from like the super expensive, super popular ones,
yeah, if you
there's still
stay
other ones that
off
are reasonably
meta,
powerful
yeah,
that off meta, but still really reasonable picks, and you can get them quite cheaply
yeah,
until someone gets them and makes a build and
yeah, a build guide
popularize
on it, and then it's there goes the prices, right? But
Mathel
that's
effect.
yeah, exactly. It's pretty
Yeah,
crazy.
but like I think you can get like a uh the assassin +1 power charge relatively cheaply, I believe. I don't know. Like all I take this info from. I've never played Trade League. The only way I take this info is because I watch a GFL clip of someone price checking a jewel that they just dropped or something like
Gotcha.
that.
Why
So
why
like
do,
I don't
why
want to
don't
say
you want to
anything
play
wrong.
Trade League?
I played it for a long enough time to know that I don't need the benefits of it most of the time.
Okay.
And I only experience the downsides. There's ups and downs both to SSF and trade, but I just
I like trade because at least I feel like I'm making some sort of progress towards my character. If I'm just farming some sort of currency that I could then turn into chaos or exalted to later buy a piece, whereas for SSF I feel like sometimes I'll never get said piece that I want to ever drop. So that's why I play trade.
yeah, that I can totally see that. And if I cared more about getting specific pieces, I'd care more about trade. But the fact that the game has been power creeped so much
Mm-hmm.
makes it that I find more pleasure into seeing what I can find and then making that work with a build. Like a lot of times I'll die and then I look at my stash, oh I got this, oh I got that, and then things fall into place and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to play X build. And that's what I really enjoy. But like the biggest thing that I wrote down for this specific question is the lack of FOMO. Fear of missing out is the biggest problem I have in Trade League, right?
Why?
Because when you're playing in a Trade League, if you want to be most efficient, then you have to let the economy dictate all your game decisions. Like from what build you play to what content you farm, what items you craft, how you use your currency. All of this is basically, if you break it down to a efficiency level, all of that is dictated for you. Those decisions are already made for you.
Well, you could just play SSF, and then if you really can't find a piece, you trade for that one piece
Yeah, you can, but
and
the
ignore
thing
all
is, what
that
I'm
stuff.
trying to say is, while trying to get good at the game, I tried to get good at trade. I played Trade League for a while until, I mean, when I first started in 2014, SSF wasn't a thing, right? SSF was
Yeah.
something that was popularized as a self-imposed additional rule by people like Anuhart and Project PT in like 2016. And it was always purely an honor system where there's no way to be sure that someone who has SSF in their name tag did actually abstain from trade.
Yeah, yeah.
You just had to believe them, right? And then it was added. That's actually something that a lot of people were surprised about. No one thought that GGG was going to do that because people thought that GGG was going to be afraid of diluting the trade leagues further. Like you already have leagues dying after a certain amount of weeks into the league, right? And
Mm-hmm.
people feeling there's no way to trade for things, and now you take away players from those leagues, players, mostly dedicated players who want to play the entire league, who will then go and play SSF instead, and therefore have the economy even die faster. So like no one was expecting that SSF was going to be an actual thing, but apparently GGG thought it was a great idea and wanted to give actual in-game support, and then they made it happen. And then the game got easier and easier over the course of the years because on the one hand you have the power creep that we just talked about, and then on the other hand you have a massive explosion of the player base, which makes the availability of items even better, right? Not only new league mechanics that are more rewarding, that are shitting out more shafts, but you also have more people who know what they're doing. who get into maps every league, and just
and
the
farm
market becomes more
quicker, and then,
liquid.
yeah, for sure. To the point where
Yeah,
their own trade site can't keep up, which is like,
yeah.
come on, dudes, you gotta give some concession here. You're the first 2 weeks of the league, and your trade site is just crashing constantly. What's going on here, guys?
Yeah, and basically that made most of the original HC trade players that were around when I started either abandon the game, go to softcore trade, or end up in HC SSF. Like very,
Mhm.
very few people are still playing HC trade. I think the majority of people moved away from it.
Why do you like playing hardcore?
Wow, I like playing hardcore. It feels like PoE is close to an incremental game where you can only fail upwards. Like there's nothing you can really lose in softcore. It's a really stupid idea to play the game in hardcore when you don't know what the game is about and how to play the game well. And I would not advise anyone to play hardcore from the start like I did. Like after basically 2 months of permanent softcore, I went to HC trade and stayed in HC mostly forever. But I don't know. Once you start once, and I told you why I started, right? Because I thought I could make money with like selling my exalts and stuff,
Gotcha.
right?
Yeah.
But then when I realized I couldn't, and I'd already learned hardcore, I kind of like had the taste of it, where you built up to that moment where you play for an hour, maybe two, maybe you play the entire day, maybe you play an entire weekend, maybe you play like a week or two, and then all of a sudden you make one mistake and bam, and you lose everything, and
Hmm.
that's just
It makes it more
it
exciting,
makes
basically,
it,
for you.
it yeah it feels really unappealing at first, but it's like self harm or something like that. I don't know. You just develop a taste for it, right?
I
Where,
don't think
like
I
you
will
said, it's
ever
more
develop
exciting.
that taste. For me personally, I just get really upset and feel like I wasted a ton of time with my character died.
Well, for me, it's all the value is all about the journey, the way, yeah, the ride, right? And like I said earlier, I always liked these self-contained sessions with
Hmm.
League of Legends because I knew I could start a game and like in an hour from now I'm done, like almost guaranteed. Like yeah, sure, some games go 70 minutes because the winning team fails to finish and then gets turned around by a lucky Baron or something like that. But what I really liked about it is that you have that one contained thing and then it's over. And that's why I also really like PoE racing in the beginning. And when I still love PoE racing, but like there's no short format races anymore hosted by GGG or barely ever.
Yeah,
Like
with the
the closest
rewards
thing
and
we
stuff
get,
like that back in the day you're talking about.
yeah, exactly. The closest thing we get nowadays is when Havoc does his Havoc Blitz series, where it's a series of short races.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, maybe for those people who listen who are not familiar with the concept, like basically back in the day, GGG did alongside the seasons. They also did race seasons that started a couple weeks into the league launch, and basically it would be a couple weeks schedule packed with short duration races with fun themes like Rogue Exiles Everywhere or stuff like that. Or they would be alternative progression, so you wouldn't play through the acts, but you'd get to play in a race called Descent or Endless Ledge or something like that. And then participating in the events and reaching certain positions would give you points. And there'd be a point system for the entire race season where the points would accumulate during the season and unlock rewards. And the rewards were
Alternate art
basically
stuff.
exactly
And some of
alternate
it
art,
was
unique items,
insane.
or fancy eye level 100 bases. So I have, for example, an alternate art eye level 100 sapphire ring, or I think I also have a heavy belt alt art
Yeah.
somewhere.
There was like Headhunter at one point that was. There was a bunch of quantity rewards back pre nerf quantity. And they used to
Yeah.
have it to where you could bring those items into the league, like
Yeah,
right at
that
the
that was before
start.
my time though that they gave out
Okay.
things that actually
Like
had like
crazy stuff. Yeah.
desirable stats or stuff like that.
Yeah. They had
Quantity
some
rewards like
crazy
that. That's
stuff.
crazy. But yeah, not only because those rewards were insanely powerful, like the one that you just mentioned, but also the player base was so much smaller, and yeah, just so many of these alt arts from back then go for really high prices in game now on the permanent leagues.
Yeah. But I think they discontinued it because one, the whole the looting thing that you were talking about. Because imagine if that was going on in addition to softcore, hardcore, SSFs of both, and then that, and then it was also the matter of in order to hit the end rewards, you had to like play all the time and wake up at weird times, and it was promoting unhealthy behavior, kind of. If you wanted every
Yeah,
point, right, you had to like
yeah,
24/7
certainly
do the
that
boat
is a
race.
criticism that one could give for the structure of these. But
Yeah,
I really enjoyed the events races themselves. Again, the self-contained nature where it just, it's done after a set amount of time or if you die, and then the ability to have so many fresh starts within a short period of time so you could get better at the early progression.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, I just really liked that. That's really what I enjoyed. And I think if it wasn't for the race seasons, probably would have never gotten as deep into PoE as I have, because that was really sold me on it. What really made me want to become better at the game was like, fuck, I want to be one of the guys who reaches top 10 every time in each of these races back then, right?
yeah.
And fast forward to 2022, and now I'm successfully groomed by GGG to enjoy the 3-month leagues like everyone else, and I barely ever criticize them for not doing the short races anymore.
There you go.
It's sad.
Capitalism, baby.
It's sad. I understand though that it makes sense, right? Like because with the short races, you know exactly when they're over, and then you leave the computer. Whereas with the game, it's really hard to find a point where you stop. Like a lot of people who play the game don't know when to stop. There's one more map, one more level, one more this, one more that.
Well, they
I
really
really
got you
understand.
by the balls because they have you playing HC SSF and there's like no end to that, and then your character dies, and you're like, well, I got to make another
See,
character, and then you get stuck in a
I
loop.
was actually gonna bring that up as a point why I like HC, because my character has a clear start and a clear end. In softcore, where does your character end?
Well, when I could delete bosses, or when I say it does, or when I'm bored. You hit the end quicker because then you get bored after a certain point. You can just off screen auto kill everything when you're running around with
Yeah,
a
but all
headhunter,
of
then
those
you're
are
done with the league.
choices where you like arbitrarily say you're done, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah, well, I get to the point where I do that and I off screen everything, and then I have a billion monies,
I guess the
and then
headhunter is a goal that you
then
said
I'm
before.
done.
Yeah,
Well,
but for
not
me, it's
really.
just
The
like my character dies and
headhunter
I know
ruins
it's
it for me.
done, right? And
Yeah,
I can drop the game. And a lot of times, like, sure, when there's a fresh league or there's an ongoing event like Gauntlet, I'll die and then I'll instantly re-roll and get my character back to Act 1, 2, 3 or something like that, so that when I start up a new session, I don't have to start from scratch, right? But like a lot of times, when I die in the off season, like if I die right now in the Totem League, I'd be like, all right, I'm not really gonna make another character in this league. And then the weekend is the melee only league hosted by Exile. So I'll
hmm
just, do like a couple of days of, Act 1 race practice or something like that. But I'm basically done with that character's journey and I don't want to play the league anymore. Like a lot of the times when it's not like super hype phase for PoE, I'll see the end of a character as the end of that session or the end yeah, of that streaming week even sometimes, right? Like sometimes I need just a couple of days after that to focus on other things. But that also has to do with me being like very I have a lot of inertia, right? Like when I go, then I go, and then I
hmm
don't stop. And when I stop and I chill, then I don't go, right? Like
I'm
when I
like that
start
too,
streaming,
very
I
very
stream for
much.
like 14, 16 hours at a time if the, circumstances allow for it, right? But when I don't stream, I sometimes procrastinate on stream or I get into like a, YouTube rabbit hole or I start cleaning up my place, which is always a different kind of rabbit hole because once you start cleaning the kitchen, you can't stop. It's so bad. Like you see so many things. Like first you do the dishes, then you clean under the dish thing, then you clean the sink, then you notice, oh, there's something on that door. Then you open the door, and then you have to sort out the things. You take out everything out of the shelves, and so that's the reason I barely ever start like cleaning or doing these chores things because once I start, I don't stop.
See, I thought I had problems with it, but now that I'm realizing that you just gave me that explanation, I realize I actually don't actually have a problem
Yeah.
at all. But I do get things stuck in my head, and I get super ultra focused on it. Like I've had times where I've coded like 16 plus hours straight, or like did that for a week, or pushed really hard, or at the start of the league that I did in the past before I had the heart attack and stuff like that, where I'm hyper focused. But then I tend to be on the other side too, where I just don't feel like doing anything. It's really hard to give me any sort of inertia whatsoever. So I got to figure out. My main challenge is figuring out how to never go in that second place, and then just always go on the keep going thing, and don't slow down.
Yeah, I mean that works if you have it all worked out, like the mode that you have to be in. But for me is like I have to switch gears always, because when you're like a one person creator on the internet, you're like the script writer, but you're also the actor who delivers the script, but then you're also the editor, but then you're also the social media manager, and you can't be all of those at once, right? So you always have to shift gears in between. You have to like today I do 2 hours of social media, then I stream for 6 hours, then I look for highlights for 2 hours, and then I edit it into a video and upload it to YouTube. And I really struggle with that. If I could really just focus on one thing and try to do that as good as possible, I think I'd be a lot more productive. But like having to switch gears, and then on top of that also having to lead like an actual life, right? On like making sure that there's food in my fridge, there's food
I've
on my
never heard
plate.
of these things. What's an actual? What is not familiar?
Well, I care about my physical needs.
Physical needs. Okay. You mean your physical needs aren't needing to level your character in hardcore SSF?
No.
Oh, okay. It's probably good. That's probably a good time to segue into the next thing, which would be why did you decide to start making content?
I guess there's many answers to that.
Give me one.
No, I give them all.
Okay.
In the correct order. No, like I said, I got into live streams already during League of Legends, right? And then when I started to get into PoE, I instantly also looked up streamers, right? Like the first PoE streamer I watched was Pox, which I think he was the first one who I looked up, and I talked to a friend about it, and a friend already knew Pox from ArchAge, so that was kind of validation for me. Oh, that's a legit content creator, because my friend already watched him with content for another game. So I instantly had that bond. But like in general, I enjoyed the streamers of the time. I was big on watching Pox, Xeno, Noogie, Rice QT, Tarky, Ziz, and watching it over the years and like seeing them grow and building their audiences and building their success inspired me a lot. And it gave me the impression that there was a place like for everyone who was dedicated enough to make good content and to stick with it. There is a place in live content creation or in content creation in general. And at the time, I didn't even consider it as something for me. I was just happy for those people, right? It never crossed my mind to actually stream myself in order to like pursue a full-time career with it. But I was very happy for those who were able to do it. But I kind of also, I guess, misunderstood it, because it was at the time that I was getting into it, it was the golden age of PoE streaming. Because not only streaming was growing massively, but PoE was like exploding with every patch, because GGG was sliding into their more polished like periodic release schedule, where they really figured out how they want to run things. And then all of a sudden, it was massive, right? And yeah, like I said, didn't think I was going to be successful, but was happy for those who were. And I'd already started early in 2015 when I did the racing, just for league starts and race events. I just streamed on another Twitch account, like a viewer account that I made when I first got into touch with Twitch. Just streamed on there my PoE game, so I could re-watch my rips and evaluate my gameplay.
So when you first started, you just did entirely just streaming and no YouTube content?
Yeah, but that was in 2015, and that was without the ambition to be successful or anything, right? It was just, I'm playing this game, might as well stream it, so I got VOD content that I can then evaluate and get better from. And maybe someone watches my stream, and maybe someone throws me a donation or something like that, or makes some fun conversation, points out something I'm doing wrong. I can learn something about the game, just making use of that internet that I never had when I was growing up, right?
Yeah.
But then when I had like a 1 year contract office job end in 2017, and I had a little bit of savings, I was like, all right, let's try the streaming thing. Why not? Let's see how hard it can be to carve out a place in the industry. Because, like I said, I was kind of deluded, not not diluted. Wait, what was I saying? Deluded. I had, like, I guess, a little bit of a wrong impression because I watched these people become big and famous during like a golden age,
Yeah.
like the gold boom in the States, right? When everyone went to the States to find gold and become rich, and like that dragged up the entire economy the same way people got successful. And I kind of just came in at a wrong time, I guess. Which is what I realized. Like I saw it always as like a long extended internship where I learned through trial and error, and I wasn't really expecting to make any money in like the first year or two. My main concern was like I want to improve on core abilities like multitasking, like reading chat and interacting with chat while playing the game. I want to be able to speak freely in English, be spontaneous, entertaining, and stuff like that. And I know this probably makes people cringe even harder than they cringe when they watch my stream.
What
Because
does what
none of
makes
these
them cringe?
qualities apply to Catmaster's stream. What the fuck is he talking about? No, but like I know people cringe when they watch my stream now, and I'm still not at my best form when it comes to live streaming, but
But you
I've
feel
come a
like
long way, and it
yeah,
was
you've
way worse.
improved.
It was
Okay.
way worse back
Okay.
then when I started.
So you're like, what are you
2017.
talking about? You should have seen me 2 years ago. It was awful.
Yeah.
It was awful. Yeah.
And to some
Yeah.
extent, I believe now I'd like to think I know what I'm doing well and what I'm doing wrong and what I need to work on, and yeah. But
What are
then
you
in the
doing
first,
well? What are you doing wrong? And what do you need to work on?
that's what you want to hear from me right now.
Yeah, sure. Why not? If you want to tell me.
Well, I
I'm
was
curious.
asking whether you're asking
Yes, I'm
whether
asking
you're
you if you would
the
like to
question.
share. I would like to know what you think that you're doing right, wrong, and what you're working on. If you'll share it.
What I do well
Yep.
is I did some things well in my YouTube content. I feel like I got a decent grasp on doing my overlay and my stream setup, audio setup. Um, I got better at playing the game, which is something that I didn't necessarily expect to that degree because I also had to get better at streaming. Man, you're really putting me on the spot. I didn't think that you were
Perfect.
gonna ask that question.
Perfect.
What am I
I
doing wrong? I certainly know, like, I identified a number of things that I'm doing wrong with the YouTube content. And we talked about it earlier. I believe that was in our warm up segment before you started the recording for the actual interview. Um, Periodic uploads, right? Like having frequent uploads. The algorithm really needs to know that you're there, ideally multiple times a day. Um, Perfectionism, like what one thing I really needed to learn and I really needed to drop, and I'm still struggling with, is like saying no to people. Not only like to people in chat. That's easy. When someone comes in chat, it's like, hey, here, my POB, can you please give me a look at it? It's like, yeah, you learn relatively quickly to turn down people for that because you can't help everyone like that, right? And you can't single out people. But like
yeah.
when someone who's already subbed for your stream for like 20 months asks you to do something, then you have a harder time turning it down, right? And you really need to think about it. And yeah, saying no to myself is probably also, I mean, in terms of letting go of perfectionism, right? Allowing myself to think of a video good enough to post it, or something I think that it's original enough to say it, stuff like that, right? There's so many pieces of content that I never made because I thought that I couldn't make them sufficiently well.
Interesting.
And yeah, maybe I'm actually right. Maybe I'm just right, and it was all the right call right along to not make those videos because I couldn't have made them as good as they need to be. But not trying doesn't make it better. Like I'm not learning from not trying. That's what I'm trying to say. And I guess that's like a great takeaway point for anyone listening who's looking to get into creation or to get into anything, is like becoming good at things takes thousands of hours. Like same as with skills like singing, writing, cooking, you need to allow yourself to produce things of inferior quality. You need to allow yourself to be bad at something so that eventually you can be good at something. So letting go of super high expectations is something that I'm still struggling with, but it's getting better. Like I'm allowing myself to do things that I don't think are good, but that may be good enough for other people to benefit from them.
Yeah. Well, these are things that like no one ever talks about. That's why I brought it up when you kind of like mentioned it.
Well, there's
Like
so
self
many more things that I
critiques
should
or
for like for the sake of completion, I should talk about when we're talking about what I'm doing well, what I'm doing wrong, and what I'm currently getting better at. But I think that gives like a nice little insight, I guess.
well, I think
I
people
mean, we
get the
could do an
impression that like okay, you make it a content creator video and now you're like perfect or you should be perfect or something like that. It's not like that. There's skills you have to develop. You have to develop editing. And like you said before, like you're essentially going on a movie set to make your thing and you're the director and the camera guy. You got to do the lighting. You got to do your own costume with your appearance. Oh, well, social media. Oh, got to do your own marketing. Oh, you got to do. And these each are completely different skills and you kind of have to have them all, and then you're constantly second guessing where should I, which one am I doing wrong? Am I doing them all wrong? Am I doing this thing? Should I focus on that? Should I focus on
well,
this? Oh, is this
you also
content
got to
good
be
enough?
your
Yeah,
own
and those are all
psychologist to not
things.
develop multiple personality
Yeah,
disorder.
or just get stuck in the loop where you're just not producing anything because you over obsess about those things. But these are things that I think all content creators go through, but people don't talk about that in general. And a lot of people think, or I like to think it in terms of a lot of different skills, and I'm working on the different skills and I'm trying to improve. So I'll pick one or two and say, for this month, I want to focus on this thing. Or maybe it'll be a different thing for the next month. So I want to just focus on making better eye contact and being more in presence of the camera, having a better camera presence. Or maybe I want to focus on thinking of what I'm going to say and then just saying it in a flow without having to write a script. Or maybe I want to focus on writing some form of a script and then translating that into talking. But all those things can help you because they could shave off later time of you having to then edit in post production, and you can get more accomplished. But I think of it like that, where there's all these little things I'm working for. And I would hope if I continue to do this 5 years from now, I'll be a lot better at a lot of the different things that I've spent time. And like Catmaster just said, you have to spend thousands of hours on any of these things. When you turn on your camera, when you make your first video, it is not going to be amazing. A lot of your first videos are just not going to be good. It doesn't mean you shouldn't make them. It doesn't mean you shouldn't even put them out there. They probably will resonate with some people. It's just you get there by doing, not speculating on if you would have done XYZ. You actually have to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that was a really good segment that I didn't expect like that. I mean, yeah, nothing to add there, except yeah, going back to the original question of like how I got into the content creation thing. So in the first 2 years, the growth was a lot better than I expected, and that really kept me going and pushing even through some maybe not so good times. And I think the industry changed a lot between when I first encountered PoE streams and streamers in 2014 and then now in 2022. Like if I look at it right now as someone looking to get into it, it seems almost impossible to like to start up a PoE channel and become successful with it. And what I want to say, I guess, is I'm super grateful that I have the medium-sized following that I do have. And after all that experience, I have a much better idea of the content creator that I can and want to be, and the overlap between like what I can be and what I want to be, and with the bubble also of things that potentially can be successful, right? You always got to find the overlap between what you can provide, what people want, and what people are actually willing to pay you for, sort of.
Mm-hmm. Do you think? Okay, I'm completely blindsided you with this one. Do you think playing hardcore solo self-found helps or hurts your ability to grow your channel?
Depends on what you build your content on. If you build your content on helping people to get good at the softcore trade economy, then it obviously is better to play the softcore trade economy so that you know what you're talking about. But I feel that softcore trade often ignores, conveniently ignores a lot of the things in PoE, how they work, because they don't need to interact with them, because they could just pay to get past them. So I think what people really enjoy about my HC SSF content is that I have to actually get into the ins and outs of like how lab works, for example, or how item crafting works, um, in a much different way than, and in a much more self-sustainable way than the softcore trade people would interact with the game. I feel like if you're a softcore trade streamer that goes to the extremes, like literally MB Extreme, for example, or Grimro or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
the way that you play the game is so far detached from the average player that I feel like hardcore solo self-found is almost more relatable. Like unless you're like one of those top 5 to 10% super juicers, right? But if you're like an average player who plays like 40 hours per league or something like that, or let's say 100 hours per league. What is the league cycle? Is like 13 weeks, so 100 hours would be a little bit less than 10 hours per week. Say like 2 days separately, 4 hours or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then yeah, like knowing the little nitty gritty things of like how some hardcore solo self-found player crafts their gear, or like caps their resistances, or which builds to go for because they're strong by themselves without getting any additional stuff. I mean, the HC SSF build selection also works that way, right? That you pick something that really doesn't need any specific items, that without interacting with anyone from trade, you can get up and running to be able to farm content to generate the wealth that you need to get the build to the next level. And I feel like there's many positive things that people can take away from HC SSF streamers, but you have to do a better job than I do, or in general, like than the softcore trade people do, at making the content seem relatable to them, to deliver the actual value that people can get out of what you're doing. That you need to transform it a little bit, because otherwise people are going to be like, oh, he's playing HCSSF, that doesn't apply to me. But there's a lot of things that an HCSSF player can teach anyone who plays the game. So looping back to your question, yes, I think it does not necessarily help me with generating enough attention as fast as possible, but in the long run it helps me because it doesn't burn me out on the game if I play the game the way that I like to, rather than the game that makes me hate myself.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, there's always the fun factor, right? Otherwise, you're not going to do it if you're not enjoying it. And
Yeah,
even
I mean,
with
for the
playing
most
the
part,
game,
people want to watch someone who's having fun playing the game because they want
yeah.
to have fun
Well,
playing the
unless
game
you're watching
themselves.
them for you want, you,
Well, there's people who watch people for drama, right? Or
yeah,
for
for the
like rage.
drama, for the self hatred. Unless you're one of those, but that doesn't probably
Like no one's
like
watching Quinn69 because he's having fun at the game. People watch him
exactly. You
because they
watch
want to
him to
see
watch
him
him
maul,
rage. Yeah,
right? They want to see him fail and be like,
so I
ah,
mean,
ha,
there
ha,
are
what an
that stuff.
idiot,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
To troll the shit out of. So yeah, for sure. But is that the community that you want? Do you want people who hate watch you, or do you want people who like watch you too? Is a thing that you
I
gotta.
encourage a positive community. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I like. I mean, people are can feel free to tune in for whatever reason they want, but if they start being hateful in chat, excessively towards me, I mean, some hate and some fun and banter is tolerated, of course. But if someone continuously produces a bad vibe, then I'll not hesitate to have them banned from the chat. I don't think that provides any value.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also right now, I'm still at a point where I can read every single message that comes in. But if I was as big as Quinn, and the chat would literally go like this, or like somewhere in between, not even that big, but like big enough that it goes reasonably fast enough that you can assume that you missed some messages here and there, then I'd also care less about like stuff that people say, right? It's just when everyone sees every message and gives it 100% of their attention, I don't want too much negativity in there. But if the negativity just gets flushed away by all the other people talking, then it doesn't matter.
So, do you have a target audience in mind for your non-podcast content?
I think that's one of my weaker points as well. If we're talking about in terms of what I could do better, I feel like for the longest time I didn't really feel like I was sure what target audience I have. Like I make all kinds of videos between like total beginner videos and that have things that would be interesting and entertaining even if you don't know the game or only superficially know the game. And I also made some videos that you can really only understand if you're already super deep in the game. So I feel like I have a little bit of a schizophrenic output there. And in the future, I'd definitely like to more target people outside of the already well-established player base. And just give people a hint of how cool PoE is, even if they don't know it. Because I think despite how popular PoE is, it's a game that's being slept on by a lot of people who would potentially enjoy it because it has such a big barrier of entry and people don't get into the game and they don't get to the enjoyable part fast enough if they play it. So if I can like play my role as good as I can in breaking down the barriers and getting people interested into the game and descending into the rabbit hole to the point that they really start enjoying it, then that would be awesome if I can focus more on that target audience.
Gotcha.
But generally, like anyone who's interested in the game and interested in talking about mechanics and stuff like that, right? Everyone who wants to have a good time in PoE is definitely part of my target audience.
Yeah, but sometimes you need to niche down to a certain thing. Like, I'm going to make X types of videos targeted at newer players or basics or something like that, or I'm going to do my content around certain farming strategies or something like that.
Yeah, you'll certainly not see farming strategy videos from me too much, seeing that that's not something I'm experienced with. That's not my area of expertise, right? I'm not going to pretend I'm something I'm not.
Well, you could do,
I'm not really good at it.
Since you're doing solo self-found, you could do
there's
ways to get
strategies and
farming strategies for div cards or something like that. Try to force div cards for certain items to get items and how it's a big deal. You can make
that's not
stuff
really
like
that
that's
different from Trade League though, right? Like the way that you force certain div cards is just
you don't in it.
available.
You buy them. You buy them. You buy them, or you buy the.
Well, I mean, there's
item.
still a reasonable amount in softcore trade who farm towers for headhunter cards or stuff like that, right? For the nurses and patients and
yeah, but it's only always that is my point. So there's probably a gap there if you're looking for ideas.
Yeah.
People probably know the Exalt one and the Headhunter cards, the doctor and the nurse and the patient, and that's about it. And those are the main things people are usually farming.
I guess that could be a video, like, top 5 easy farmable SSF div cards
I'm trying to
progress you or something like that. But it's like, it's a really good video to make if you make it well. It's just I guess a mindset thing where you feel like, and that's increasingly a problem when making PoE content for so long, is like you feel like, well, everyone already knows that. No, fuck. Your target audience doesn't know it.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Where you're overthinking.
You're targeting
just
people who are
just
just getting into the game, and everything is worth mentioning. Like the Chains That Bind card, great. If people don't know about it, they'll love the tip that they can just chain the cage map and probably have a set done within an hour or so.
Yeah, there's a discrepancy there. I made a video this league that was talking about the attack in place checkmark.
Because, that's also super important, yeah.
So that came up from my Discord where someone was saying someone didn't know that you can even do the attack in place at all, and then someone else was suggesting that you hold down shift to do it, which is a way to do it. And then I told them, hey, you know that there's like a checkbox, put on the skills you want. And
For
that
a
hold
really long
shift and
time, that
and
checkbox wasn't there, and you had to hold
exactly.
shift.
And it
It was so bad.
it blew their mind. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should make a video on this. Like 5 people in my community didn't know about it, and I thought everyone does. So sometimes you just overthink those little small things, and they are good things to cover.
Yeah,
Especially
absolutely.
since the game is growing a lot of times and newer people are coming in, they don't have that 8-year history, 7-year history on the game. Like I've been playing the game since the Shrine League. So all the stuff that
Yeah.
you talked about, actually, I did an 8 out of 8 challenge back in the Beyond League where you had to play both leagues and got like really crappy reward. Kind of one of the crappiest rewards that they ever gave out. It's like a Halo and it's gold. But I have that, okay? But back when you used to have to play both leagues. And I thought that was very interesting to do the challenges. It forced you to do both the leagues. But no one understands any of that stuff, right? Even and I find it interesting and a little bit annoying too when they did the crush of all the skills, all the support skills, and like nerf them all into the ground. A lot of people skip that league and played the previous league, and then they come back now and they're like, all these builds suck. Well, of course they did. GGG took an axe and went minus 70% or 70% less damage across the board. Of course you're going to have to invest more. Like, what do you mean? You know what I mean? Like that discrepancy. Frustrating for me, at least, as a content creator. I also hit a bunch of my content as a result of that. And then I felt like I wasted my time. But anyways.
I see that, yeah. Yeah, that's definitely like something that I feel like there's a lot of things that could be still improved on PoE content in terms of like format and like how people do it, how people get the information across of like how it relates to PoE at this point. A lot of times when I go back to older videos, so many things changed. I almost think it's better to do the approach that like Project PT once did a build guide where he chopped the build guide into different sections and made an own section, an own video for every section, so that if something changed about that section, he didn't have to make a completely new build video, but just change out that like little part of the build guide. I don't know, stuff like that. Obviously, that's just an example.
Did he put it into separate videos or the same video but recorded?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay, separate videos.
Yeah, the
I think that
problem
was
with
before
that,
there was chapters.
yeah, the hard part is getting people to actually watch a chain of videos. It's incredibly hard to do that. Get them to watch the next one, because I don't know if you've realized this yet or not, but it used to be mostly search, but now most people watch videos based on their homepage.
Recommendations, yeah.
Yeah, homepage and up next and stuff is what a lot of people do instead of search.
See, I'm kind of oblivious to that because the way that I use YouTube is like 10% of videos will come from my recommendations and 90% will come from like direct clicks or from my subscriptions. Like my start page when I go to YouTube, the link that I have on my start page to YouTube brings me to youtube.com/feed/subscriptions so that I see all the videos uploaded by creators I follow. I don't get anything from channels that I don't follow, and I don't get like I don't miss anything from people I do follow, right? Everything it pops up in that feed. But like I realize, and that's good that you point that out, that's not the way that 90+% use YouTube.
Yeah, so another mistake that a lot of people make is you assume that people who watch your content, just because you've done all the stuff, have watched all your content. And what you actually should assume is that every video is the first time you're interacting with someone. That's probably more likely than the opposite. So a lot of people will rely on inferences from all their previous last 5-10 videos. And then if someone clicks in without watching any of those, they'll have no idea what you're talking about. So trying to cut that out is probably a good thing if you've never thought about that.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Makes sense. But that hooks back into like you don't want to overcomplicate your videos with repeating information either. So you have to find a nice middle ground where like every video brings the viewer up to level even if they've never watched anything that you've watched.
Yeah,
but then
or
at
at
the
least
same
some.
time
Mhm.
doesn't annoy the people who've watched every single one of your videos to the point where they're like, I can't watch this because this guy has the same 1 minute intro every video, right? Or you also don't want people skipping your intro, right? Because skipping view time is bad.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah,
It's
yeah,
about how to structure a video as well. So what I've been experimenting with, or what I'm going to try to do more of, well, so I baited myself into changing my style for the 4,000th time. So I decided, okay, I want to just sit down and be able to just talk, basically do what Grimro does, because it's kind of working pretty well for him. Then he just kind of does a 1 or 2 take, something like that. Okay, whatever.
Mhm.
But that was the complete opposite style that I was going for before, super edited video. But I think I was on to something back in November, and I got a ton of views of that style, where I would do like an intro highlight thing for the first minute with like parts of the video that's going to come up later, and then do that, and then go into the different sections of the video. I think that's the way that I'm going to structure it this one, and then try to actually do like little Easter eggs in the video, and then try to do like little jokes throughout the video to try to get people to watch to the end. That's what I'm going to go for this cycle, I think. And that's what I was getting towards in November, and that worked out really well. And then I tried to go into that other style for this cycle, and that didn't work so well. But it's really hard to then, you have all those other external factors like Lost Ark.
Exactly, it's really hard to isolate. We talked
any
about that earlier.
single variable at all is just so hard to pinpoint. So a lot of times it's just like just make content for months and then set aside every 2 months and then look at your content and then try to decide. Otherwise you end up tweaking too many things all the time, and then you get meaningless data really, and you get meaningless conclusions kind of. So that's something I struggle with all the time, but I'm always thinking of.
I totally agree. That's super good advice, is to not be too results driven, to not check every video you upload, what you could have done wrong, what you could have done right, but to make a series of videos and see how that compares to another series of videos. But, you know, again, with the cyclical nature of PoE and the fact that like sometimes leaks just don't sit well with the community and people abandon them early, and it's so hard to get comparable data.
Yeah, for sure with that. Yeah.
Absolutely. But
because you have that curve, the downward curve, which it's at a different rate. So you almost have to do that. I mean, you could kind of extrapolate a little bit if you're doing good. If you look at all the other channels' performance curves relative to yours and see if it is or isn't you, then you could a little bit factor it in, but you still, it doesn't tell you what you did was good or bad. But one of the things you can look at is your retention graph. Do you know what that is on the analytics? It shows you where people are skipping.
Where people jump off the video.
Yeah, either jump off the video or when they skip sections. Which, hilariously enough, in one of my newest videos that I did like super sick intro, and then I went full screen thinking, okay, well, I'm going to be more approachable, and I'm just going to like just talk and then do some B-roll stuff. And there was a giant dip, and people just skip that whole section where I'm just talking. I'm like, damn, people just really don't like looking at me, apparently. Now, I don't know if it was my phrasing or my frame where people aren't used to that or whatever. But it seemed like in that
PoE
specific
videos,
video,
people want PoE things on the screen.
Exactly, the whole time, and not people, which is a really weird thing. It's hard to connect to people when people don't want that, right? So
yeah,
it's hard to figure that out.
No, and but then, you know, it's like it's similar as with like when you're trying to make friends in public or engage in like conversation or like, you know, hit on a lady that you find interesting. You kind of want to, you know, offer yourself and like be there, but you also don't want to like burden people with your presence. You don't want to like get too much in their face, right? You want to get your point across, but then at the same time leave space for them. And I've definitely
I'm done with that.
Things where I was like,
I'm done with that. I'm going in their face. They're gonna have to struggle to get me out of their face. That's what I'm thinking. And it'll either work for some people and they'll like it, and the other people, you know.
I mean, that's also something really important, is like you know that you can't please everyone, and if you end up trying to please everyone, you'll end up pleasing
no one.
Yeah. Right? So
and I started with that attitude, and yeah, so now I'm still paying the consequences sometimes. Like viewers who thought I was someone else that I'm not, and then they're super offended when they find out that I'm a. So better to just put yourself out there, use your own personality. Why mimic other people? You got to use your own personality for content creation, not someone else's watered down carbon copy of them. You can get inspiration from people,
I mean, if
but
you're
you got to
doing
be
VOD
yourself.
content, if you're doing VOD content mostly, you can get away with being a fake persona or being like a, you know, like a character. That works. But if you're trying to do full-time streaming, that will most likely not work because you can't play a character for like 8+ hours per day.
Yeah, but at some point you're going to actually want to be yourself, and then when you be yourself, now you have a huge problem. Unless you know that, unless it's a very conscious effort, do this like fake persona, and you have you're grounded outside of it. But I think most people don't respond well. At some point, then they feel like everything is fake. The amount of people that they like is fake and stuff like that. And I think that's people struggle with that in the long term.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It could be good for hate, like, oh no, people just hate my character, not me. But when it comes to liking, it's the opposite. Like, oh well, people like my character, not me, that I'm playing. It could be
and
an ego
not you.
thing. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there could be overlap, right? There could be overlap between people who like your character and people who also like you. And again, like the way, depending on how you structure your content, like I said, if you only do videos and you only do like one video per week, right? And you get millions of views, then what's the harm in being like a fake character in that video? If it's for the sake of entertainment, you're a good actor, you deliver a quality performance, why not? But if you're trying to do something like so frequently, you can't be a fake character. It will put a strain on yourself.
Well, I'm talking in the terms of using a character that people think are you, and then later on you start adding elements of yourself, and then people don't.
Oh, okay, I was thinking a character that very obviously is not you. Sure, like yeah.
Yeah, like
Don't pretend to be something you're not. And
yeah, exactly. That was my own point. Like, be genuine to yourself. It's always going to turn out bad. Well, unless you're a shit person, right? Then work on yourself so you're not a complete scumbag. I don't know. Where did this go? Man, I derailed. Cut the podcast.
I was thinking like some you know, like VTuber stuff like Code Miko, where it's like very obviously not a real character, right?
Yeah, but some people go on and then they like let's say that I wasn't like Quinn at all, but I tried to mimic his style and do what Quinn does and be that sort of like play a character that's my interpretation of what Quinn is. And then like that's what was all my videos. And then people liked it or hated it or whatever. And then one day I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. I just actually wanted to be myself and make other videos. Then you're going to get a massive amount of hate. That's what I'm trying to say. You see what I'm saying?
Possibly. I mean, not necessarily, but yeah, possibly you get hate. Possibly you just get a lack of attention.
Well, you don't know any of that, and then you have an extra, a crisis. Kind of. An identity crisis. that was where I was going with that. Anyways, I don't know how we got on that. All right. We're pretty far in. We haven't even talked about your podcast at all. We probably should start talking about that.
That's a great topic.
Yeah. Let's hear about your podcast. Why did you decide to make your own podcast? And yeah, let's start there.
Well, I've always been, like I said, I got into Twitch from League of Legends and directly went into Twitch when I started playing PoE. And so I didn't only discover PoE streamers, but also most of the OG podcasts, right? Like when I was first getting into PoE, there was this podcast called State of Exile by Xenocide Genius. That was the big PoE podcast at the time. Like that was what you were watching in order to hear people talk about the patches and like get some developer interviews and some insight on what they thought or what the thought process behind changes was. And then soon when I got into the game, like I think during 2015 already, Tarky started Bayclast, right? And then Project PT, I don't know whether it was before or after Bayclast, but Project PT did Lie Nice Watch with Hegemony. And then somewhere in between, there was also the Coffee Talk with Morse and Noogie. And I really enjoyed all the different perspectives and insights that those gentlemen were able to provide. Like, I guess because I wanted to get good at the game, I was extremely elite focused in the beginning when listening to content creators and podcasts because I was trying to become good at the game. So I wanted to listen to people who were good at the game, right? But I also started to understand the value of new player perspectives or casual player perspectives, or more generally, like different perspectives in general, right? Um, and then when I first started streaming in 2017, I was approached by another PoE creator whose name was WaifuGate. It was
Waifu
pretty
Gate
popular at the time. Yeah,
sounds like
WaifuGate.
a cover up or a government operation gone bad.
Well, he was pretty popular for his like super min-maxed softcore magic find build, Windripper City.
Okay.
Uh, and he was like, he wanted to do a podcast, and I was intrigued by the idea because we had very different angles looking at the game, right? He was the softcore trade guy who did magic find and like basically like played the game almost like diametrically opposed to how I played it, right? Whereas
Hmm.
like hardcore solo self found and stuff. And I think that was 2018 though. I think 2017 I started in Harbinger League, right? I started HC Trade and Harbinger League, and then December League 2017 was Abyss League, and I think Abyss was my first solo self found.
It's hard for me to even remember the leagues because, like I said, I've been playing so long. Or some of these
Hard.
podcasts, I don't remember. Well, I don't remember what year any of these things are. You know what I mean?
Well, I
Like
had
they
to order
happen.
my thoughts a little bit, like knowing that I would come on here. I was thinking about the times past, and I was like, I didn't look up anything, but like, I mean, the thing is also I have a pretty decent memory when it comes to PoE because it's like the only structure in my life, right? So I know that
Yeah.
there was Harbinger, then Abyss, then Bestiary, Incursion, Delve, Betrayal, Synthesis, Legion, Blight, and so on. What was after Blight? Metamorph, then was Delirium, then was Harvest, and so on. But we do that all the time on stream, right? There's so many times where I've been wrong or I missed the league or something like that. So everything I say, take it with a grain of salt. It may be incorrect. But yeah, basically, WaifuGate approached me. I liked his different perspective, and I also liked the idea of like, talking to a native English speaker, like engaging with other people in the English language. And I really wanted to regain my abilities in the English language. I wanted to maintain it and improve upon it because at the time when I started streaming, I had already been away from the international university college that I studied at for a couple of years, and I had been doing jobs like German office jobs where like no one talked English to me on a daily basis. And so I was very happy to have the opportunity to do more of that so I can improve my language, get better at streaming, get better at talking,
Hmm.
right? And then I think after a couple of episodes, where like first just did the episodes with each other and then started to bring in guests. And then I think like 8, 9 episodes in, WaifuGate decided to quit PoE as his main game, and then also subsequently left the podcast. And at the time, I was like, really unsure how I wanted to continue, right? Target Cat was transitioning from a format where he had guests and a changing lineup to a fixed lineup.
Hmm.
So I definitely knew that my podcast would have a niche because there was like no podcast that did changing guests after that, or like at that time. Sure, there were others in between and stuff like that. And there's always been going the Forever Exiles by Wrecker of Days and man, brain fart. I don't know the other guy's name. If I look on Twitter now, I know it. But anyway, like Record of Days, Forever Exiled. Those guys have guests every now and then. But yeah, there was really no like bringing different guests or different community teams members together, right? Like I feel like that was really the niche, was like having conversations take place on the podcast that normally wouldn't happen in public, like bringing people on who don't publicly interact normally with each other. And then I did like 2 episodes with just me as the host and like changing guests. And didn't help the structure and the consistent feel of the podcast. I was like, if there's 3 other people every time, then the feel of the podcast is going to be way too different from episode to episode, right? People want like consistency, at least to some degree, right? It's refreshing to have new guests in, but you also want to have the podcast to have the same vibe that you tuned in uh, for last time, that you liked last time, right? You want to watch another episode of what you liked and not get like a mixed bag of like whatever. So I really knew I wanted to have another sort of partner slash anchor slash co-host.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I probably never talked about in public, but like we had episodes with Octavian. I don't know whether 1 or 2, and I really wanted to ask Octavian to be the co-host because at the time Octavian was establishing himself pretty much on the playing field, and like it's still the case. Octavian is just generally liked. Like when Octavian says things, they're usually smart things and they're usually reasonable things and well articulated. So apparently I wasn't the only one who thought that, because it just so happened that Tarky Cat offered him to co-host Bakelast with him already at the time that I came up with like, let's ask Octavian. And then I asked him and he was like, yeah, unfortunately I'm already doing this.
Gotcha.
And then I guess what happened then was I still didn't know what to do. I'd been shouted out by Gazi in the streamer interview on the PoE website. And that was really huge for me, by the way. Like, Gazi was, at the time, that was end of 2018, I believe. Like, that was, like, Gazi was already doing PoE content since 2012 or 2013, right? He had his YouTube channel for like close to 6 years at that point. So being noticed and then even shouted out by someone who I perceive to be one of the absolute OGs of the game, that really upped my my self-worth as a creator. Quickly taking a sip. And then I invited Gazi on because I felt like that was the right thing to do, right? He shouts me out. He never was on the podcast. I'll bring him on. Maybe he wants to be on there and talk.
Yeah.
And it was cool. He came on, did it with Balor Mage again, who had been previously on. And I guess in retrospective, I could have asked Gazi to be the co-host at that point because he was clearly interested. But it didn't even cross my mind. Like, I didn't have the self-esteem. And also Gazi is like kind of a busy guy. He has all the other projects that he's managing. And I also like felt like he was out of my league. Like, it would be weird for me to like bring someone on who's so much more well established than I am, so much better established.
That's the smart business move, man. You should just do it. Just go for it, man.
Yeah, but like, you never know where you would have ended up, right? Like, maybe Gazi would have been, maybe I would have been super successful with the podcast in an instant, and then something else would have gone down. And
there's no point in second guessing yourself about those things. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's not what happened. So.
In retrospective, I really think that Balor was a great choice. Balor is like just a tad bit more agreeable than Gazi, I think, and a little bit more compatible with all the potential guests that we could want to have on. Like, not saying that it wouldn't work with Gazi, but like, Balor is really flexible, really agreeable, and like generally in a good mood. And Gazi is a friendly guy, but can get confrontational and like sometimes a little bit absorbed in his own view of the game, which is a good thing, right? If you're very confident, but like, I think it's easier to get Balor to second guess himself. But yeah, that basically is the story of how the podcast got to where it still is now. Like, nothing much has changed since then. The exception was that in the beginning, the idea was that, Balor and I share it 50-50. He gets the VOD on his YouTube. I do the podcast live on my Twitch stream. And we organize the episodes together. But like recently, like a year or something like a couple of months ago, Balor decided that he didn't want to be involved with all the organizational overhead anymore and wanted to step down as a sort of co-host and is just like a regular guest now. He's the guy who's consistently there. He's like the drunk who's at the pub that you go to every time you go there, right? Like, he does.
Balor Mage, you've heard it here, folks. Balor Mage, the drunk that just happens to be there.
Well, I mean, like, he doesn't do any of the actual work that's required to keep the bar running.
This is so going in its own segment, by the way.
but you'd still argue that the place wouldn't be the same without him.
Yeah, you know, with all the vomit and the feces that he puts in the corner. Is that where you're going at?
I wasn't thinking that drunk. I was thinking a friendly drunk who just happens to be there
drunk.
because he doesn't have another social circle. I wasn't thinking.
Maybe it's a difference of like the meaning of drunk in in America, and I'm thinking like degen drunk in the bar or something. That everyone's like, just ignore that guy. Don't go near that guy. That was the image that popped into my head when you started saying
that's just a metaphor, though, because the drink really is the game, right? Like when you go to a pub, you'd go to have a drink, right? And we on the podcast we talk about PoE. So Balor is drunk on PoE, if anything.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Not trying to cast actual shade at Balor.
I don't know. We'll let him decide when that's a segment, I suppose.
Yeah.
We're gonna need him to weigh in whether that was offensive or not. I'm not sure.
Balor always insists that he can't possibly be offended. So
that he can't be. Well, we just tried. So there you go. Get fucked, Balor. No. So behind the organization and stuff, how hard is it for you to get guests on, and how hard is it to wrangle streamers and content creators? Because I heard Tarky telling me, especially Rise QT is actually one of the hardest people on the planet to get a hold of to get on any podcast or contribute at all. Do you have a lot of trouble with people?
Funnily enough, I can't confirm that. I don't.
He just doesn't like Tarky.
Yes, exactly. But don't tell him I told you. No, what I'm saying is like I don't have a steady flow of communication with Rise, but the few times that I did reach out to Rise to talk about things, he responded rather quickly.
Gotcha. What about other people?
But like maybe it's different when you get like, you know, a message every week, or when you send him a message every week or every couple of days, then maybe he misses some. Maybe I've just been lucky with the time that I reached out to him that he was just at the PC at that point.
Yeah, right? It could be. You never know.
In those 2 days.
Yeah. So what about other people? Have they
I'm luckily in a position where I feel like I can reach out to almost any PoE creator, especially also via Balor, because like one of the two they're always familiar with, and you know, been doing the podcast for long enough that people know that it's a thing. And yeah, I'm in the happy position that most of the people that I could ask to come on would happily come on. There's some people who I don't think want to come on or something like that, who I get ghosted by, but like, you know, it's everyone's got to do what they got to do. Like, I'm not judging people based on like how they interact professionally with me as a streamer. Like maybe they're just, you know, isolating themselves for certain things. You know, there's some people who I don't ask anymore. Let's say it like that. But there's a wealth of people who will happily come on and discuss PoE topics, and I'm very grateful for that, because as much as I'd like to, I obviously don't even come close to making enough money with the podcast that I could offer like a payment, right? So essentially when those streamers come on, especially streamers who are like much bigger and much more successful than I am, like Scissorin, for example, I always find that so amazing that he like takes 2 or 3 hours out of his day that he could actually use to stream and like generate income, right? And he just comes onto my podcast to sit there and talk about the game. That's that's very humbling and very cool. Big shout out to everyone who's been on the Faded Connections podcast and everyone who's still coming on, and yeah, I'm happy with it. I do want to be a better host though. Like I've definitely made mistakes in the past. Numerous different things that I just need to get better on. Like starting with like just planning ahead for longer and not asking people very last minute to come on for an episode like 3 days down the road, but like trying to plan out an entire season of episodes for a league and ask people before the league even starts, hey, like so and so many weeks into the league, could that possibly work? Can we already fix that? And then what we talked about it in the beginning, talked about before, I think, this interview, where I said that you're certainly doing some things wrong. I think like I could do a better job at creating like an atmosphere where people feel comfortable about talking. And that would probably be the best if I did that for some episodes, but not for every episode. I get everyone into a call before the actual episode happens and just to, do some small talk and
Mm-hmm.
set boundaries or establish a way of like not interrupting each other and like having a conversation in harmony. So like a lot of times when we do an episode and people are on there who haven't been on there before, it's kind of hard to find the groove, especially with the stream delay, right? Because when you have someone on from Australia and someone from Belfast and someone from the West Coast or East Coast, even worse, I don't even know what's worse. We're like already back more than halfway around the globe. Anyway, but what I'm
There's
trying
a
to say
delay on
is,
a delay, basically.
yeah, exactly. You have like several hundred milliseconds between like one person starting to speak and the other person actually seeing and hearing that person starting to speak. So like you'll end up interrupting each other a lot. And it's gotten better over the course of the podcast for sure. But yeah, I just hope that in the next decade or two we'll have some sort of internet technology revolution where we all magically are connected to each other with 20 ms or something like that. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
But until then we'll have to
Well, teleportation, I think, mostly, and then you could just have them teleport into your
right
thing and
and then
sit around the
just
table
not even
and solve it that
right
way.
an
Yeah.
actual set like the like the Joe Rogan podcast or something like that,
Yeah,
right? We actually have
exactly.
people on the same table and use proper microphones and the same headphones and everyone has like the same conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be super cool. I mean, I've always been dreaming about like becoming like a professional interviewer or like traveling journalist or something like that. I just feel like there's so many like core skills that I lack that I've never really tried to do those
Well,
things. I
but
mean,
you got to
I'm
start
I'm
somewhere, right?
thinking, hey, you got to start something, and that's by doing a gaming channel and by doing a gaming podcast. And eventually, when I'm happy with how the podcast goes, which will probably be never, because perfectionist mind will always find something to complain about. But like eventually, I'll get it to a level where I feel comfortable also, reaching out to other people and doing another sort of podcast where we talk about creation or like whatever topics. Like I'd really love to have those conversations, and I think it's great that you're starting one like this so I can learn from your mistakes.
First of all, I don't make mistakes. I make
Right.
happy little accidents. Okay, so I know that's a Bob Ross quote there. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you got to just put yourself out there, face plan as hard as you can, and
Yeah, and
you
find
you
out what
you
works and what doesn't.
yeah, exactly. And then you learn some stuff. And you're like, well, that was really bad, and it hurt. And then you carry that for a while, and then eventually, hopefully, it heals. And then you know. But if you don't try things, then a lot of people just. I think of a world like this. I go to some meetup with all my friends years later, and we're all old. And one of my friends goes, "Ha! I've never failed one time in my entire life." For some reason, he's an anime character. I don't know what happened here. And then I'm just like, I failed all the time. Which person would I rather be? The person who tried stuff and failed and learned from it, or the person who's like, ha, never ever failed because I haven't
Right.
even tried a single thing. Like,
True.
I
One of my
don't want to be
favorite
that one.
German proverbs is like a joke that goes like, aus Fehlern wird man klug, darum ist einer nicht genug, which basically translates to that, you learn from mistakes, and that's why one mistake isn't enough.
Yeah, for sure. So the best thing you could do is learn from other people's mistakes. You don't have to make the mistake, but then sometimes people don't try stuff, so you got to make your own mistakes. So, but life's a learning
Right.
experiment or experience. You
Yeah,
got to
and
put
I've
yourself out
certainly
there.
made a lot of mistakes over the last couple years with content creation and the podcast and the YouTube. So I should have a wealth of knowledge by now.
Are you saying you don't, but should?
Well, I'm not sure.
You're not sure. What's the
Um,
biggest thing
uh,
you've messed up? What's your biggest mistake? Do you think?
for the podcast,
I don't know. In general, in content creation, what's the biggest mistake you've ever think you've made?
general and content creation, I guess. Mm, not setting it up from the start in a sustainable way with like a job on the side that pays for the expenses,
Hmm.
but living off of savings and like having some good months, having some bad months, and all that stuff. That is troublesome. It would be much better if I had like a job that I worked like 20 to 30 hours per week, and that would like just pay the rent and like the bare minimum, and everything else. Like that if I wouldn't have to worry about the financial returns, it would make the streams much more relaxed. Like it took, of course, I can ignore it now. I can completely let myself go and immerse in the content creation process. But yeah, for a long time I wasn't really completely free of it, and I would get very frustrated if a stream wasn't better or generating more attention or revenue or whatever than the previous one was. Like that's definitely not helping your content if you have to constantly look at like how successful you are, because people notice that, right? Like people notice when you're not having fun playing the game, or when you're actually just looking to get success or subscribers or whatever.
Yeah, you come out well in general in life. You whenever you come
Yeah,
off as desperate, people can smell
needy.
that,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
Desperate and
yeah,
needy in
exactly.
general,
Even
and
in
then
normal social interactions, right?
yeah, and then just anytime you're trying to negotiate, you never want to be in the desperate. You would never want to have no leverage or be the subject of they have all the leverage because you're going to get the crap out of the deal. So
Yeah.
so it's always bad to be in those situations. You got to start
Yeah.
somewhere, but you don't want to be in that sort of like desperate reek of desperation thing.
Yeah, I guess so. The biggest problem is it's not that I don't have a plan B. Like I could stop streaming and just, I know I could get a decent job, but like I've been throwing all my eggs into this basket for a long time, and I think it would have been better and probably a lot more relaxed. Even maybe not as successful, maybe more successful. Who knows? We really never know. But it definitely would have eased my mind a lot more if I had made a sustainable plan from the start.
Yeah. One of my biggest things is consistency. I think that I'm messing up on still, but I don't really have a solution for the Path of Exile content to a certain extent. But these interviews, for instance, like because I'm posting some of the snippets and then trying to redirect to the full interview, that's giving at least some consistent posting on the channel. But I think it's really hard for Path of Exile to do because I never know what I'm going to do next, or I never know what
Yeah,
I'm going to farm. And it's kind of like a feels thing. And then I get burnt out and I don't want to overpromise things. So it's really hard for me to be
yeah,
consistent
but
with
that
Path of
has to do
Exile
with
content.
like expectations towards yourself, expectations to like a minimum level of sophisticated content, right? But like we said earlier, like just a video about the attack on
Yeah.
attack only,
Mm.
not move, or what is the
Yeah.
name again? Just a video on that. Like basically every day I stream, I could make a video where I just talk about something for 6 to 10 minutes, or just a short or something like that. I feel like really is like the trick is to lower your threshold of expectation, where you're like, this is the minimum I need to have in order to be able to make a video. Uh,
Yeah. It depends what you want your content to be or what direction to be, too, though. But
yeah.
yeah.
No, I remember like one of the most successful videos I did recently was just a 1 minute short video, which was just a stream highlight clip of me showing the Onyx amulet recipe. Which,
Hmm.
for anyone listening unfamiliar, you can vendor any amulet in Path of Exile with a red gem, a blue gem, and a green gem. So 3 gems, different colors. You can buy each of those for 1 wisdom scroll from the Act 1 vendor. Right? Just buy a Molten Strike, a Split Arrow, and a Lightning Tendrils or something like that. Right? And you can vendor any amulet with those 3 gems. And what you get back is an Onyx amulet. But it is the same item level as the amulet that you used for the recipe, and it also retains the same influence. So if you vendor an Elder amulet, you get an Elder Onyx amulet, meaning that you can transform any like shitty base like a Coral amulet into an Onyx amulet, which is a little bit more useful, right? Because Coral amulet is like what, 4 life regen per second. No one would craft an
Hmm.
endgame amulet on that. But Onyx is an acceptable base, right? So you only have 1 Elder amulet, you can make the base that is more desirable. But not only that, the recipe, and that's something many people don't know, also clears off corruption. So if you have a double influenced amulet, like super valuable base, right? You roll something good on it, and then you're like, this would be really good if I had +1 curse and something else, right? You go double corrupted, and it bricks into a rare, into another rare, or something like that. And then it has a corrupted tag. You can still use it for the recipe and get an uncorrupted base back with the same influence and the same item level.
Interesting. I actually didn't know any of this.
So it's basically, it's like an AWP of scouring, because you can take an amulet and take off all the rare mods and make a white amulet from it, but it only costs you 3 wisdom scrolls. So you basically get the value of a scouring from 3 wisdom scrolls, but on top of that, it also works with an influence, with a corrupted base. So you can clear off the corruption from like any base that you would want to use. And yeah, so I explained that on stream. I made a highlight video of that and uploaded it as a YouTube
you should
short,
do more.
and I think it's like
more of
close
those.
to 30,000 views now.
Yeah, you should do more of those, just like little tricks or whatever.
Yeah,
upload a bunch of
I
those.
wanna, but like then I have to. That's really doubling down on like growing your stream through content and growing your brand, because from YouTube Shorts you're not earning any money. Well, like 30K views, I got like 50 cents from that, right? Whereas
Did you make it? Did you make it a short, or just did it as a short?
It's a short. It's a 59-second video, or 1 minute.
Yeah, but did you do hashtag short and edit it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
That's also why it probably,
because there's
got
also
so many
short
views.
videos.
Yeah, you could also just make a short video.
That's what I'm
like,
saying.
How
I'm
many
not
ad
saying-
breaks are you gonna put into 1 minute ad video?
No, you get a post sometimes or a pre. I actually did like a 30. I actually found that there's a huge differential between 27 seconds and 31 seconds on a video. But like
Really?
I did like a little teaser thing, and just like for a next video, and it got like 80,000 views. I think it got like 60 cent RPM, so it was like $40. So there's a difference between short videos and YouTube Shorts. A huge discrepancy between the amount of money you can make. You can make a bunch of 2-minute videos, is what I'm saying with that, and just not make it hashtag shorts with that thing, and you actually can make some money with it.
Nah, what I'd probably do is like I'd bank on people like checking out the short and wanting more information, being like, oh, I dig the style of presentation, or I dig the information, whatever, and I'm gonna check out the content, right? And then have videos that explain like an entire topic, like say betrayal, right? Interacting with the syndicate, and have like an entire video with all the information in there, and then being able to clip from that and make like shorts with like just the juice, where it's like a 1 minute, and then have the short link back to the video in the description, or like mention it in the end of the short, so that this is taken from an entire video. Go check it out. And I think that's the way to do it, because I think shorts have like a really good reach with the shorts feed. Like, I mean, the video has been up for, when has it been up? For almost 3 months now, 84 days. So just before the league started, right? And has 28K views, 91% of which came from the shorts feed, just from people scrolling through shorts.
Interesting.
And that's probably, at least to some degree, the fact that there's not that many PoE short creators. There's just not that much PoE short content. So when the algorithm is like, okay, this guy is going into shorts, what do I recommend to them? Oh, they like PoE? Yeah, then give him that video, right? Because it's one of the very few that actually is thriving on shorts for PoE. So I don't know how well this will hold up as soon as that niche is more saturated. But for right now, I feel like YouTube PoE shorts could be really good. But then again, they're quite a bit of effort to make if you want to make them entertaining and well. Like, there's got to be a lot of edits in a 1 minute video for it to be a good short. Especially because you need to make it very information dense, because you can't exceed the 1 minute, and then you can't monetize heavily on them. Like, I mean, like you said, you could upload it as just a short video without the hashtag shorts, but then you're missing out on like all the people from the shorts feed, which is like free exposure. So yeah, like I said, the way to go, I think, is like produce content that doubles as VOD content as shorts content. Ideally on a live stream, right? You go on a live stream, you explain the game. Afterwards, you highlight from the live stream explaining the game and make a video that explains the game in a nutshell, then take highlights from that and publish them as shorts. Like
Yeah, if you could do that,
multifunctional content, basically. Like get more content out of your content, basically.
Yeah, that's what I try to do with a bunch of my
Yeah, I mean,
content,
like you said,
or
you
think in terms
upload
of that.
snippets from the interviews to the main channel.
Well, like 1 or 2 to the gaming, and then a bunch of the other ones segments on the full interview channel, and then I'll also do shorts as well out
Right.
of that. And then taking it further, then I probably will take all the snippets and post them on Facebook, and then I'll take all the shorts and post them on Instagram, Facebook
Do you have a TikTok?
feed, and a TikTok. I mean, kind of. I created one. I don't post any of the TikTok stuff. See, I don't think there's a good volume for doing the Path of Exile stuff, so I would do this stuff with tech content, and I would do this stuff with interview content, because I think those are more widely appealing than like what you were saying of a Path of Exile recipe. It's just a matter of how many people will watch Path of Exile content overall.
Yeah,
like the perfect
and
video.
that hooks back into my ambitions to maybe like reach a target audience outside of the general PoE demographic by making videos that just appeal to gamers in general. And
Yeah,
people
that's
who are
a different,
potentially interested in the game
completely.
rather than like the
Yeah,
already existing hardcore into the game audience.
yeah, that's more making an entertaining video that you don't have to follow. But sometimes it's like you basically have to make a video where they don't even know, they don't know what PoE is, and just cool things happen, which is kind of hard to do without any context sometimes, right?
Hmm.
Because the
Damn,
ones
I
that
just
people
saw.
put in for Gamer for Life, those all have PoE context to it, right? Like a Mirrors Dropper or an Exalt or whatever. Well, that's not very exciting. You don't know what Path of Exile is. You don't know what that currency is. So you'd have to have exciting things
Well,
happen.
I know why he does that, because like a lot of people want to see that from his audience, and I'm not criticizing Gamer for Life in any way with that. But God, I hate that highlight clip meta. It's like, oh, mirror.
Gotcha.
Oh, a headhunter or whatever. Yeah, great. Someone dropped something. That's like literally you're
People
just
like to
watching at the
watch.
game.
People like to watch people dropping things. They find it
Yeah,
exciting.
but it's like watching a slot machine roll 3 right, like 3 bananas or something like that. It's like, oh yeah, that's great, but those things happen. It's like,
Yeah,
where's the
and the video,
accomplishment?
right
Where's
in
the
the video
individual
next,
value?
right over and over. I don't know, man. You're sounding like a content snob right now, a little bit.
Content snob. No, I'm just like,
Yeah,
if other
no,
people enjoy that, that's
no.
fine. I
I mean
personally
that
don't
it.
enjoy that
Yeah,
content.
yeah, yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Well,
It's like
okay.
that's the kind of clips where I go through Gamer for Life and I'm like, okay, when is the actual content happening? It's like, sure, when there's like some Russian reacting, like I said, with the mirror, blia, and stuff like that. I'm always laughing. I always think it's funny if the reaction is generally cool, right? But
Yeah,
it's like just plain drops is like not interesting. Then I'd rather see like crafting outcomes or something like that. That at least like, you know, if a headhunter drops, a headhunter drops. But if someone exalt slams a good mod on his item, then I first have to look at the item, be like, okay, why is that an item that you would slam? And then why is what they got desirable in the context of the item? And that kind of informs. At least it has something to do with the game, even though it's still completely RNG content. But the best clips, but that's, you know, just me, I'm biased, but the
when you
best
make
clips
videos,
are hardcore rips.
do you think about what you want to see or what other people might want to see?
Both, obviously, both. I'll
Okay.
try to, you know, try to think of what my audience wants, but I also try to put myself into the shoes of the audience. Like when I critically assess whether my video is going to be good, I'll go through like it. Does this viewing experience make sense? You know, is there like, is it building
Yeah,
up
I
properly?
guess
Do
my
I
point is
take everyone?
I think I'm an odd individual. The stuff I like to consume is not what the average person or a lot of the audience would like to consume. What was my point?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's probably true.
do you think you're a
I
normal or an abnormal person? And if so, then you need to rethink how you're thinking what a good video is. And that might be one of the things that is holding you back a little bit. If you're only making things that you would find appealing, then you're probably missing out.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I can see that from how the best videos that I made in terms of success are not the best videos that I think I made in terms of like videos that I would like to see.
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
it's like capitalism,
There's
right?
a
It's in
huge
the market.
discrepancy between my favorite videos from a creator side and my
Yeah,
favorite videos in terms of like how successful they were, or like even my most successful videos. There's very little overlap between those.
yeah, which
Although
means if you're
there's
trying
one
to
or two.
make more that are appealing to you, that's probably the wrong direction to go because they're not going to resonate with the audience that's available. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's what people want to watch, right? We don't get to control that. I mean, you
Yeah.
can, but then you have a much smaller audience that's just like you, right?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely know what I like. One thing I don't want to do anymore, and that's something I've tried in the past and that other people do better than I do, is like doing these like videos that are very short term or like event driven or news driven, right? Like the videos that Sir Gog makes when there's a new leak dropping and there's a
Mm-hmm.
new info post by GGG teasing a unique item. I'm never gonna make a video about that again, unless I feel like I have something genuinely original to add to the debate. But like, I feel like other people like Sir Gog or Badger do a way better job at like presenting those news posts and putting them into context. And you know, most people are not going to watch my video if they already watched 2 or 3 from that. Like, not every creator needs to make a video on every news post dropping. And also, those videos are really great. Like when the hype cycle for the league happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those videos explode, and those people earn a lot of money with all the clicks. But you know, a league later, those videos are worthless. No one's gonna watch a video from a news post for last league, next league. No one's gonna care. And what
Yeah,
I really
we're
want to
talking
make,
about evergreen content essentially
yeah,
that they can
exactly. I
watch.
want to make content that is so well produced and explains the basics of the game in such an appealing and relatable and relevant way that you could still watch it even if the mechanic changed, right? Like I want to make a video about elemental equilibrium that is so good that even now after elemental equilibrium is changed, people would still watch that video and be like, that was a fun video to watch because it was informative, even though it doesn't apply to the game as it is currently anymore. But like, I want to make the videos in such a way that you could still watch them in 2 years and take something from them, whether it be entertainment or information,
Yeah, I
even
think
if it's
that's
wrong
really.
information.
I think it's really hard to do that with Path of Exile, unfortunately, because they change it so rapidly
Yeah, but if
and
you
make
look at
things.
like do you know the Zeph? How does his name actually? How do you pronounce the name? Zeph Sintach or whatever his name is, like the POE
I have no.
parody video.
I don't know
I'll
what you're
send it to
talking
you
about.
after the interview.
Okay.
Like that video is so old already. It's like several years old, and you can still watch it. And the game has changed a lot since he made that parody video. It's like an honest trailer, sort of, for PoE,
Yeah, but
right?
that's a completely different content than
Right. Yeah,
informational,
it's
though. So
entertaining
you want to
content, but
make
like,
an entertaining content, not an
yeah, but
informational.
I
It's hard
want
to
my
marry the two. Yeah.
yeah, you can do entertaining and information.
Yeah, but
Right.
until they change the information, and then it loses a bunch of the thing, so it's harder for it to be relatable. So you
Well, a
almost
lot
want
of
to
the jokes that he
reinforce.
makes relate to something that is not real in PoE anymore, but it still is funny to watch because of the way that he presents it, right? And in the same way, I think you could do that for like other videos that are not that don't have a satirical intent, but rather try to inform about the mechanics. Sure, like some 1 or 2 core aspects may change, but there's so many things that stay the same in Path of Exile. Like they changed the armor formula, for example, right? They made armor twice as efficient. But the general idea that armor works in a way where it reduces a smaller hit in a stronger way than the same amount of armor would reduce a larger hit, that still holds true.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had a good video explaining the armor mechanic prior to the change, then that would still be a good video after the change, even though armor doesn't work the exact same way anymore. Maybe that's a bad example, but like that's the kind of idea I have. Like the video wants to tie the thing that I'm explaining into the rest of the game so well, explaining the other things so well that even if the thing that I'm explaining changed, that there's still value to be derived from the video.
Mm-hmm.
Not just on an entertainment level, but also on an entertainment level.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing all the insights and stuff and being vulnerable and telling us where
Glad
you came
to.
from. So
Now I can finally drink water because now I know I can go to the bathroom in just a second.